Dan Wells is a horror writer whose first book, I Am Not a Serial Killer, is already huge in Europe. It comes out in the United States in March 2010.
You add round characters in there, you add rich environments, magical cafeterias and Quidditch games. We're going to talk about some of these later. The Ice Monster Prologue. I'll just let you wonder what that is for a while. Try-fail cycles, subplots depending on size. If you're writing a short story, you might not need any subplots. If you're writing multiple ones, or say you're writing Wheel of Time, you're going to need like 500 subplots. So our question here about what if you do both, what if you're focusing on plot and character, that's where this comes in. You can, and we'll look at that later. First, before we look at that, I want to talk about the hero's journey, because that's essentially what we just did with Harry Potter. Check this out. Here's our Harry Potter thing that we just wrote. Excuse me. Now, see what happens when we remove all the nouns. That's the heroes. Now it's not just the plot of Harry Potter. It's also the and Aragon and The Matrix and The Wizard of Oz and Beowulf and like a million other things. Because it's a very common archetypal plot that you see all the time. But you don't have to do that. There are plenty of other plots. And as soon as I take a drink, we're going to look at some other ones. Okay, so we're going to look at romance first. I promised someone that we would talk about love stories here. So, Pride and Prejudice. Nice. Can we use the same structure system that built us Harry Potter to build Pride and Prejudice? Yes, we can. How does Pride and Prejudice end? Booyah! They get married, engaged, whatever. I've seen the movie. They get married. Okay, so if that's our resolution, then we need our hook. And our hook is our opposite state. So in this case, they're not married. They're single. And we'll throw some sisters in there because we're going to need them later. So we need our midpoint. As a midpoint that moves us from singleness to marriage, we're going to have Elizabeth learning enough about Darcy to start falling in love with him. And in the book, she accomplishes this by having Darcy explain himself and his actions. He's kind of socially awkward, so he does it in a letter, but it's still enough. She learns about him, and she learns that he's a noble guy, that he's a little concerned about impropriety because she has some pretty freaky sisters. But, so that's our midpoint. And she starts to think, well, this guy's not as bad as I thought. She's now moving from reaction, he's horrible, to action. I need to learn more about this guy. I need to maybe drop by his house. Things like that. So, plot turn one. We need to introduce our conflict. What's our conflict here? Zombies! Somebody read the wrong one. They hate each other. They meet each other and they hate each other instantly, which is great. Just back off, okay? He doesn't hate her. She's beneath his notice. He's not handsome enough to tempt me. So, there we go. Plot turn two. And frankly, he must have been watching a different movie, because she was handsome enough to tempt me, I'll tell you that. Plot turn two. We need our last piece that is going to allow them to actually fall in love. And the way they do it in Pride and Prejudice is, Darcy has already stated his good intentions and his nobility, but he hasn't yet demonstrated them. So that's what he does, by helping her sisters out of the problems that they are in. And so we need problems for the sisters to be in. Good thing we have two pinches left, huh? Pinch one, which actually takes place over a number of different scenes. Darcy breaks up Jane and Bingley, says, she's not good enough for you, Bingley, so there we go. That's horrible. She finds out Darcy did that, and then then he comes and proposes to her and insults her. Says, I know this is stupid of me, because you're not good enough for me, but would you marry me? And so that's a pinch. She hates that. That applies pressure. Okay, pinch two. We need it to be worse than pinch one. That's okay, because Elizabeth has a much worse sister. Lydia runs off Wickham, and this is a really bad pinch for Elizabeth because, as we know, Darcy does not like the impropriety of her sisters. And so when it turns out that she's just run off and shacking up with this dude, that means Darcy is probably never going to speak to her again because her sisters are so freaky. But, of course, then we know Darcy is a good guy, and he helps them both out, and then we fall in love, and then everything's awesome. So there's our romance plot. Let's look at a tragedy plot now. This is different from the other ones because it's going to end sad instead of happy. So the crux we're working toward has to build toward failure rather than success, which is really weird. We're going to do this with Othello. Who's read Othello? Not enough of you have read Othello. Okay, our resolution. Sorry? There's a movie you should all go see, apparently. Okay, what's our resolution of Othello? Everybody dies! More specifically, Othello kills himself. That's really what we're building toward here. Okay? So we need to start with our hook, which is the opposite state of not killing himself. He's alive! He's in fact happily married to Desdemona, and we threw her in because she's in the poster there. So we figured there had to be a girl. Okay, midpoint. We need something that is going to move us from happy marriage to suicide. And I think suspicion. Somebody said suspicion. That's a great one. He suspects Desdemona is cheating on him. So that he's moving from his happiness toward his sadness. All right. So that's a good conflict. We need to introduce it. Good thing we have a third guy in the poster. Iago swears he's going to destroy Othello. And that introduces our conflict. And as long as we're here, let's just toss the pinch right in there. He does so by planting evidence of an affair. So that leads us into our suspicion and forces him into action. Pinch, plot turn 2. Plot turn 2 is going to be tricky because, like I said, we're trying to build toward a sad ending instead of a happy one. So what's going to move him from suspicion to suicide? Well, yeah, knowledge. Yeah. He's a very violent guy. So he could kill her. Killing her is actually the pinch. What turns him then, the information he gains, is that she was innocent. You guys aren't reacting as well as I thought. She was innocent and he just killed her, and so then he kills himself. No, he should have killed Iago. But Iago was like, Iago does get arrested at the end. So we have that. But anyway, tragedy, everything's sad. We're if he was smart enough to kill Iago instead of himself, we wouldn't really be telling his story to begin with. All right, so we've done hero's journey, we've done romance, we've done sad ending tragedy. Horror, that's my genre. Let's do this one. We're going to do it with what I consider to be the most finely constructed short story ever written, which is The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. The resolution here, we're not necessarily building towards happiness or sadness. What we're doing, the purpose of our story, is to convince the reader that the narrator is insane. And therefore, our opposite state to begin in, the narrator is sane. That's like the first thing he says is, hey, I'm actually sane, guys. Don't do anything to me. It's actually interesting in the story. He doesn't even try to tell people he's innocent. He just wants to tell them he's not crazy. That's more important to him. So what's going to move us from sanity to insanity? He murders a dude. He lives with a dude, with this old guy. Let me point out at this point, the story doesn't actually have any gender pronouns in it. And so, well, it does, but only when talking about the old guy. The narrator could just as easily be a woman, and it's really cool to read it that way. I think you should all go try that. So, plot turn 1, he decides he's going to kill him. That's when we introduce our conflict. I'm going to murder you, creepy old man with your creepy eye. He has like this weird eye that freaks him out, and he decides he's going to kill him because of it. No, because the thing we're building toward is not his action, it's his insanity. So this is where we have to kind of wave our hands a little. The reaction-action thing is not as strong in a case where your resolution is not one based on action. It's based on a point we're trying to make. But in the reader's mind, what we're trying to do is take you from a state where he's sane to one where he's insane.